You were always a selfish brat, and now you've proven it, she spat, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that only amplified the venom. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, a familiar perfume of familial judgment. I didn't flinch. I just nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement, and let the silence stretch, a tightrope I'd walked for years. My life had always been a carefully constructed facade, a placid surface over a roiling undercurrent of resentment. We lived in the same house, a sprawling but aging Victorian that had once echoed with laughter and now only creaked with unspoken grievances. My younger sister, Clara, was the sun around which our parents revolved, her needs, her whims, her perceived injustices always prioritized. I was the moon, a quiet observer, dutifully playing my assigned role, the responsible, uncomplaining one. The one who always picked up the pieces, who smoothed over the rough edges, who quietly absorbed the constant barrage of subtle digs and outright criticisms. They called it my temperament, my quiet nature. I knew it for what it was, survival. Clara, a creature of exquisite entitlement, had always had a knack for orchestrating crises. It was her life's art form. I remembered one particularly humid summer, the kind where the air feels thick and sticky, clinging to your skin. I was 16, working a part-time job at a local bookstore to save for a used car. Clara, who was 14 and suddenly obsessed with equestrianism, declared she to attend a prestigious summer riding camp. The fees were astronomical. My parents wrung their hands, lamenting the impossibility. And then, Clara, with tears welling in her eyes, the kind that never quite reached the surface, looked at me. You always say you want to help, she'd whispered, her voice trembling. Maybe you could loan me some of your savings? Just until Christmas? My savings, hard-earned from stacking dusty paperbacks, felt like my only tangible control over my own life. But the guilt, expertly applied, was too much. I handed over the wad of crumpled bills, my stomach churning. She got her camp. I got bus fare for the rest of the summer. The car remained a distant dream. Another time, shortly after our parents' retirement, they'd decided to downsize. The house was too much for them, they said. Clara, by then well into her 20s and living a seemingly charmed life, casually mentioned how nice it would be to have a little pied-à-terre in the city. Her current apartment, a perfectly respectable place, was apparently cramped and lacking a certain je ne sais quoi. My parents, eager to please their darling daughter, started sifting through their finances. I overheard them discussing selling off a small plot of land our grandfather had left them, a peaceful patch of woodland that was supposed to be my inheritance, a quiet place for reflection. When I cautiously brought it up, my father waved it away. Oh, darling, it's just a few acres. Clara needs a place to start her business. It's an investment, really. Clara's business was an Etsy shop selling artisanal soap that had yet to generate a single sale. The land was sold for a pittance, its sale finalized without my signature, without even a formal notice to me. The proceeds? A down payment on a chic studio apartment that Clara promptly decorated with expensive designer furniture. These were just pebbles, of course, small stones dropped into the vast ocean of her entitlement. The constant assumption of my availability, my quiet acquiescence, my role as the family's emotional buffer. It had all led to this. The air in the meticulously tidy living room was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that settles like dust after an argument. Sunlight streamed through the bay window, illuminating motes dancing in the stillness. Clara sat opposite me, her posture a carefully cultivated blend of defensiveness and righteous indignation. Her face, usually soft and round, was tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line. Beside her, on the antique mahogany coffee table, lay a sheaf of papers, crisp and official-looking. My parents sat on the floral sofa, their faces etched with a familiar mixture of anxiety and weary resignation. Clara had declared herself unable to pay her rent for the upcoming month. It was a sum that made my breath catch, $4,000. A sum that I, with my modest salary and carefully budgeted life, would struggle to scrounge together in a year. I just don't see what the problem is, Clara began, her voice wavering, a performance honed to perfection. It's just a temporary loan. You can afford it. You always have money saved up. She gestured vaguely towards me. Mom and Dad already said they'll cover half of it. So, you just need to come up with the rest. My mother wrung her hands. It would really help us out, dear. Clara's just hit a rough patch. You know how it is. My father nodded, his gaze fixed on the polished surface of the table. A little help goes a long way, son. The unspoken addendum hung in the air. I looked at the papers. They were copies of bank statements, proof of savings. My savings. The money I had meticulously set aside, month after month, for a down payment on my own place. A place of my own, free from the subtle judgments, the constant comparisons, the suffocating expectations. A place where I wouldn't be the designated family ATM. A place where I could finally breathe. Clara's gaze, sharp and demanding, met mine. There was no trace of apology, no hint of vulnerability. Only an audacious certainty. She expected me to cave. She always did. I took a slow, deliberate breath. The air felt cooler now, less charged. I reached for the papers, my fingers tracing the embossed letterhead of the bank. This is my savings, I stated, my voice unervingly calm. For my own property. A place I intend to buy. Clara scoffed. Oh, don't be dramatic. It's not even enough for a deposit on a shoebox. Just give us the money, and we can all move on. My father cleared his throat. We're not asking you to give it, son. Just a loan. I looked at Clara then, truly looked at her. I saw the practiced helplessness, the ingrained belief that the world owed her sustenance, that her siblings were simply extensions of her own financial infrastructure. And I saw something else, too. A flicker of panic, quickly masked, as she realized I wasn't automatically folding. I saw the wheels turning, the calculation of how to deploy the next emotional weapon. But it was too late. The years of quiet endurance, the silent accumulation of resentments, had coalesced into something solid, something unyielding. I picked up one of the bank statements, holding it out. This statement, I said, my voice even, shows the source of these funds. All of them. They are from my personal income, earned through my employment. I then reached into my briefcase, which I had intentionally brought, and withdrew a single, folded document. It was a deed of trust. A document I had prepared myself, with the help of a lawyer I'd consulted months ago, a precaution against this very scenario. This, I continued, my gaze unwavering, is a deed of trust, securing a portion of my family's ancestral land against certain financial obligations. Obligations that were never formally repaid or acknowledged. Clara's smug expression began to falter. Her eyes darted between the deed of trust and my face. My parents looked bewildered. What are you talking about? Clara's voice, losing its practiced sweetness, was laced with a growing edge of confusion. The woodland, I explained, my voice measured. The plot our grandfather left. The one that was sold off to fund your city apartment. My father, in his eagerness to facilitate that sale, agreed to a clause in the original deed. A clause that stipulated, should certain family members become financially dependent on the proceeds of that sale, or require substantial financial support, the remaining heirs would have a claim on the asset. I paused, letting the words sink in. The asset, in this case, was the land that was sold. But the clause was written broadly. It encompasses land registered under our family's original title, including the house we are currently sitting in. Clara's face drained of color. Her mouth fell open. That's not possible. That land was sold years ago. You can't possibly. The sale was contingent on specific repayment terms, which were never fully met, I clarified, my tone devoid of emotion. Essentially, the transaction was left in a state of indefinite lien. And the deed of trust I've just filed formalizes my claim on the remaining family assets to cover that deficit. Which, as it happens, is exactly $4,000. The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a metronome of Clara's impending doom. Her eyes, wide with a dawning horror, flicked to my parents, then back to me. The entitlement, the arrogance, had vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. My father finally found his voice, a weak, reedy sound. "Son, are you saying?" "I am saying," I interrupted, my voice firm, "that my savings are not for your sister's rent. They are for my future. And this deed of trust ensures that the outstanding financial obligations within this family are finally addressed." I placed the deed of trust back in my briefcase, neatly folding it. The transaction was complete. No theatrics, no accusations, just a quiet execution of a plan months in the making. The immediate aftermath was a storm of furious text messages and tearful phone calls from Clara. Her initial disbelief quickly morphed into a torrent of accusations, painting me as a heartless monster. Her friends, a collection of equally entitled individuals, chimed in, their keyboards clattering in righteous indignation. My M.O. They, predictably, tried to broker peace, her pleas laced with familiar guilt-tripping. "Can't you just help your sister? It's just a small amount for her." But I didn't respond. I let the silence do the work. Clara, suddenly finding herself financially stranded, her carefully constructed life teetering on the brink, was forced to confront the reality of her own self-inflicted predicament. The landlord was unforgiving. Eviction notices began to appear. Her artisanal soap business continued its steady march towards obscurity. The city apartment, a monument to her perceived sophistication, was now a looming financial disaster. My parents, stripped of their usual escape hatch, and me, were forced to confront Clara's irresponsibility head-on, their enabling finally reaching its breaking point. The hushed conversations in the living room turned into sharp, uncomfortable debates. The quiet satisfaction wasn't in the destruction itself, but in the meticulous dismantling of an illusion. Clara's illusion of perpetual privilege, my family's illusion of my unending subservience. The $4,000 wasn't just rent money, it was the tangible manifestation of years of quiet resentment, a debt long overdue, finally collected. I had seized not just a sum of money, but a moment of profound, unassailable control. The satisfaction was cold, precise, and utterly grounding. I had finally built my own quiet place, not with bricks and mortar, but with the unshakable foundation of my own autonomy. And the silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard.